People in power at this time on Al Jazeera.
The top 1% of the top 1% grabs all the wealth. 85 people have as much money as 3.5 billion other people. That's the old news. Now the story is about power, about the decline of democracy, about the decline of the nation state. The story is about a small group of super wealthy ruling the United States. Is this the rise of the oligarchs here and throughout the world? Empire at this time on Al Jazeera.
Egypt launches airstrikes on ISIL targets inside Libya. International pressure mounts on the UN to take action. Hello from Al Jazeera's headquarters in Durham, Jane Dutton. Also ahead, deadlock in Ukraine, while both sides in the conflict are refusing to pull back from the front line. Outrage in Turkey over the brutal murder of a young woman triggers days of protests by rights activists. And furry friends know more why New York wants to crack down on costume characters in one of its most iconic neighborhoods. Egyptian warplanes have carried out airstrikes in Libya, targeting positions held by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. It's in response to ISIL's beheading of 21 Egyptian hostages on a beach, shown in a grisly video released online. A warning that viewers may find some of the images in Gerald Tan's report distressing.
Egypt retaliates. The operation in Libya visible from miles away. The military says it was going after targets affiliated with ISIL, but these strikes in Derna damaged several buildings in a residential area. Civilians were killed, including children. The air campaign took place just hours after Egypt's president warned it would respond to the killing of 21 Egyptians in Libya.
Egypt does not only defend itself, but the whole region. Egypt will react in the right time.
Egyptian fighter jets took off before dawn. The internationally recognized Libyan government based in Tobruk says the operation was carried out in coordination with its air force. But the rival National Congress based in Tripoli is denouncing the attacks.
We strongly condemn the Egyptian offensive on Derna city. We deem it an offensive against the Libyan sovereignty. We are sending our condolences to the family of the victims, and we call on Libyans to unite and end this critical situation.
Egypt's military has been running a campaign in the Sinai Peninsula since August 2012. As security unravels in Libya, it's forced to tackle the advance of ISIL on both sides of its border. Other nations are also concerned. ISIL made a direct threat to Italy in its latest video. The country, separated from Libya by a narrow strip of the Mediterranean, has now evacuated its embassy there and is calling for UN intervention. Gerald Tan, Al Jazeera.
Let's take a deeper look at the situation in Libya. It's been descending into chaos ever since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. At the root of the turmoil is a political crisis in which two rival governments are competing for power. There's the elected and internationally recognized government based in Tobruk. It moved there after it was forced from the capital Tripoli by Libya Dawn militia fighters. But there's also a self-declared government called the General National Congress based in the capital. Making the situation even more complicated is strongman General Khalifa Haftar, who's leading a fight against Libya Dawn militia. He's been appointed defense minister of the Tobruk government. Both Libya Dawn fighters and pro-Haftar forces are fighting for control of oil refineries and the central bank in their bid to consolidate power. Anas Al-Gamati is the director of the Tripoli-based Sadek Institute, a think tank focusing on Libyan issues. He says the Egyptian strikes are likely to change much on the ground.
This may provide some temporary relief in the way in which the Jordanian airstrike on ISIS did last week. But in a real sense, a few airstrikes is not going to do much in the longest scheme of things. And in effect, you know, the problem with ISIS has been generated over decades, and a few airstrikes over a few days is not really going to provide much of a relief or much of a strategy against a very irrational enemy. You know, Libya is at this very, and especially with the international crisis, it's at a very interesting kind of nexus point where you have local issues amongst two rival factions versus international issues such as ISIS, such as migrant flows from the Libyan coastline, such as the European fear of ISIS. And in that respect, it's going to be a very, very dangerous time because each side had its eyes on two different, very different targets. On the one hand, how do I consolidate power or get more power in Libya? And on the other hand, how do I stem the flow of you know, foreign policy and security measures into Europe? So I suppose in that respect, Derna, you know, can be seen from very different lights. On the one hand, Libya Dawn is viewing it as very much the same. They're only really feeling the pressure from Khalifa Haftar, and they want to view it as the old regime. On the other hand, you know, Operation Dignity wants to view this as much of the same. It's all the terrorists working together, and it really obfuscates and distorts the image because at this stage, ISIS is on nobody's side. ISIS is not on the side of Libya Dawn or on Libya Dignity. It's very much on its own side. And if you look at the messaging that they had, it's very apocalyptic. It's very end of times. They don't want anybody to be looking at Libya in terms of civil war. They want to be looking at it as this is Islam versus the West, clash civilizations. It's very much what we've been seeing.